Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Today, we are talking to Massachusetts attorney Stephen Macek, who is also known as Stephen the Medium. Stephen is one busy man. Along with maintaining his law practice, he sees clients for medium readings, speaks at live events, travels doing group readings, and is the host of a weekly radio show called Through the Static, which airs every Wednesday, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time worldwide, and even gives live readings on air. Stephen will be one of the mediums demonstrating at my very first live event in Boston, February 22nd through 24th. Stephen is a good friend of mine. He was one of our guests in the very first episodes back in 2014, and I love him dearly. His website is stephenthemedium.com, or to listen to his radio show, you can go to wararadio.com, and you can easily find Through the Static with Stephen the Medium and listen live. Stephen the Medium, my friend, welcome back to We Don't Die Radio.
Oh, Sandra, my dear friend, thank you. You know, when you just talked about the February event, I had to put my hand in my mouth because I wanted to interrupt you and say, yay!
I know.
Just so excited about it.
I am feeling the yay over here, too. It's a really big deal. Between yourself and the other speakers, I just feel like we've got the very best information about the evidence of the afterlife. Tons of help to comfort people that are grieving, and just fun, excitement, mind-blowing stuff. So thank you for being a part of it.
No, listen, thank you. I feel honored that you asked me, and I really do feel, not only just by looking at what you've already put together on online, but this is just going to be groundbreaking with how you're putting this together, and the collaterals that are going to be speaking, and it's going to be amazing. So anyone who's listening that are going to be at this event, I'm just so excited that you're going to get to experience this.
Yeah, I like pinching myself now. And if you want to find out more, you can go to wedon'tdieboston.com or wedon'tdieradio.com, and you can find plenty of information. But Stephen, this episode's about you, and you've come a long way in the last 4 years since we spoke.
Absolutely. When you just said 4 years, I can't believe it's actually been 4 years that we did that interview at the beginning stages of when you started this radio show, and look where it is now. But yeah, things have definitely been on the express for me, whether I want to or not.
Yeah, well, Spirit World wants you to. So I think, like myself, we're just along for the ride, and they just keep nudging us in the right direction that we need to go.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Stephen, if you don't mind, some of our listeners will choose to go back and listen to episode 15. But for those who don't know you, would you mind just introducing yourself and maybe telling us how you got into believing in the afterlife?
So my name is Stephen Macek, as you mentioned, Sandra, and now known as really Stephen the Medium. And I was actually just going through my life, for the majority of my life, just being an attorney, starting my own practice. And I lost my dad when I was 8 years old. He committed suicide. And back then, after, 8 years old and forward, there were times that I would get signs from him, and really just very subtle signs, just sort of knowing that he was there. And I thought nothing of it, because it really was it wasn't like I, would look up and see him standing there. It was nothing like that, but it was good signs. It was signs that I knew were him. And I just went through my life always being a believer, because I think just the desire to know, or want to know, that my dad was always with me after he had crossed, was something that I hung on to, and just always felt like, this isn't the end. Physically, when we die, it's not the end. I never really thought too much about it, but fast forward to 2010, and Elix, my husband, and I went to see a medium here in Massachusetts, and she came up to me, and I was the first one that when she said she was ready to start doing the presentation, she came up to me. I was the first one. She asked me who I was, and I said, Stephen, and she said, you're a medium and you don't know it. And she turned around and she walked away. And I looked at Elix and said, "Where's my reading?" I was more concerned about, when she came to me first, my father's finally going to come through. Like, this medium is great, and she's going to give me messages, and that didn't happen. And it's sort of like my balloon was popped, and I just sat there for the next 2 hours and really was not processing what she said. Maybe halfway through the 2 hours, Elix tapped me and said, "Did you hear what she said?" And I said, "Not really." So at the end of the show, he said, "You need to speak to her. She just said you were a medium or a psychic, and you don't know it." So we waited to talk to her, but there was just too many people, and we ended up leaving. And I was very confused and disappointed that I never received a reading.
Right.
And the next day, I just emailed her, and she emailed me right away. She apologized. She said, I did not want to just blurt that out and not see you afterwards. And we had some conversations. And to be honest, Sandra, from that point on, it was like the light switch went on. And once Spirit knew, I knew, even though I really barely knew, because I didn't know anything about the spirit world. They just started just tapping me, and I didn't know what it was. And Elix thankfully purchased a 18-week 18-week home study to become a certified medium, and I did that. And through Carol Nicholson, who is a great friend of mine and is really the best mentor I have. And I am here now with through the Static radio show, doing readings online and doing large groups. And it's Sandra, it's been a crazy train.
It sounds it. Can I just ask you a few questions? A couple questions
Sure,
that came to mind. When you were a boy, what kind of signs did you get from your dad? I only ask this if you remember, because so many people are looking for signs and might not be really paying attention to the signs that they're getting for their loved ones, and they think they're not getting anything.
Yeah, and now where I am now, I understand that every one of us gets number of signs each day. Back then, of course, I didn't, but one of the signs that kind of sticks out is that when and I think I've used this before, that I was in Providence, where I grew up, with my mom and Elix, and the three of us were going to go out to get dinner, and we were walking out, and I forgot something. I went back into the house, and Elix kept going to the car. My mother was just getting her stuff ready, and then when I came back out again, I saw this blue balloon that was just sitting on the ground, and Elix wasn't in the car. He was right at the sidewalk, and I walked out. I said, "Where did that come from?" And Elix just looked and said, "I didn't even see it until you just pointed it out." And I just thought nothing really of it. And my mother came out, and my mother said, "Where did that balloon come from?" And I said, "I don't know." And my mother said, wouldn't that be funny if that was something from your father, because today is his anniversary. It was August 25th. I don't remember which year it was. And it was his anniversary of his crossing. And I said, that would be really strange. So I picked it up thinking, God, you really think this is a sign from Daddy? And she said, yeah, it could be, because my mother was very supportive with this whole spirit world.
Right.
And as soon as she said that, I went to drop it, and because I really wasn't sure what to do with it, and it just came up as if someone took it from me and filled it with helium, and it wasn't stuck on the ground when I looked at it, because I picked it up and put it back down, and it just came up like it had a full. It was filled with helium. And I looked at my mother, then Elix came up. I looked at Elix, and all three of us, our faces were looking at each other like, how are we all seeing this? How is this possible? It was sitting on the ground. There was no helium, and it was like someone just blew it up. And I put it back down, and it rose back up. And I said, Ma, not even understanding this, I said, you're right. This is Daddy. This is Daddy's sign to say he's with us and he hasn't gone anywhere. So we went to the other side of the yard, and I said, we need to let this go and have it go up, and he's going to catch it. And that's what happened. We went into the bigger yard. I let it go, and Sandra, it went up until we couldn't see it anymore, from a balloon that was just sitting there. I mean, that was a pretty spectacular sign. But I knew in my being, even though I had no idea I was a medium, I just knew in my being that was a sign, and my mother did too, and Elix did, and it was pretty it just stands at one of the signs that stands out.
That's great. We have to be open, I think, as human beings and in the present moment to be able to catch these things and acknowledge them. I was just driving, was it yesterday? And I was thinking about my dad, and I stopped at a stoplight, and just in front of me was John's service station. And I'm like, Dad,
Exactly, Sandra. That's how it works.
yeah, or I smell a cologne, or I don't know who this is around me, but I keep smelling. Um, it's like a smell of a pipe. And I took myself to the movies the other day, and I'm sitting in the movie theater and I smell it again. And then just yesterday, I'm on my couch and I smell it again. And then about sometime last week that I noticed I smelled it. I'm smelling it strong enough that I'm looking around like, who's got this pipe? And it didn't dawn on me till yesterday that I bet you it's somebody in the spirit world. Because we have a house of non-smokers here,
Yeah, and absolutely. And what people don't realize, because we all want our loved ones that we knew to give us signs, which they do all the time, but absolutely there's times that somebody that we don't even know is just hanging around with us, if they know that there's a chance that we'll be able to recognize that sign or smell that sign, and then they're like giving like a little applause, like, oh, she got it. And the wild thing is, it doesn't even matter if you didn't know the person. What spirit tells me is that they still get validation from that, and it means so much to them that they penetrated through the veil to get to somebody, and that just gives them the confidence then to go to the people that they really knew, when they were on Earth. So it's pretty amazing.
Oh, you say that. I just spoke to someone not too long ago, and they were talking about sitting in a development circle, and all this evidence was coming in really detailed for people, or really detailed coming through them, but nobody there could take the evidence. And so, they got a little frustrated, like, why am I seeing things in such clarity or hearing them or feeling them? And then it was another medium who came into the group, and without even knowing about that last meeting, this woman said, or I think maybe it was a man who said it, Spirit World just wants me to tell you that you're the perfect development circle for the people in the unseen world to practice putting their feelings, their images, their thoughts into people. So we can't, like I always thought once we cross over that we've got all the powers in the universe. I think, no, we're still people, and we have to learn from that point of view how to manipulate a balloon, how to make the smell of a pipe, through energy, whatever that may be. Don't you agree that there's got to be some learning on their point of view as well?
Absolutely, Sandra. And that's what I had just mentioned about people thinking it's always just their loved ones, but it really isn't. It's sometimes it's even like in your case, it could be somebody who is ready to reach out and says, you know what, I'm not sure which family member, or if they're even that I'm feeling like they would be able to get my sign where they are currently, but let me try this out on somebody who's very connected. And that's what happens all the time. And then they build their confidence, and Spirit tells me all the time that it takes a huge amount of energy, just like it does for mediums to connect, but it also takes a huge amount when they even come in as visits in dreams. That takes so much energy. And I know people say, why don't I dream of my mom, my dad, my grandmother more often? And a lot of times it's also because of the other side. They give signs all the time, but it takes a lot of energy. And it's tiresome, different there than it is here for us. Because I know when I'm done a 2-hour event, I am done. I'm so tired. It's different from them, but it still takes a lot of energy for them too. So that makes perfect sense. What whoever the person is with the cigar.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, hey, let's practice on Sandra. I think that's funny.
Absolutely.
As far as energy goes, Stephen, does our energy as a human being make a difference in a reading? Because like right now, you and I were laughing just before we got on. I feel great. So would I be more prone to help the spirit world with their energy than somebody who's like in a really deep, dark state?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely helps. Absolutely, because the whole, like, the number one driving force here is energy. I mean, because we're all made up of energy, whether people, animals, plants, trees, everything is made up of energy. So absolutely. So if you come in with, just the excitement and having like a high level of energy, absolutely. But I also have been in situations that I've done readings say that people in the group are 100% skeptics with their legs crossed, their arms crossed. And, I know, some mediums will say, uncross your legs and cross your arms. And I mean, you can't always just tell people to do that because people just won't do that sometimes.
Right. Don't tell me what to do.
Exactly. But a lot of times, in my experience, is that even someone who is, their energy is what they think is closed down, and they're skeptic, and no, this isn't, I don't believe this isn't true. Spirit then will, in many cases, take over, and actually they'll ask others in spirit, whether, if it's me as the medium, they'll ask my guides. I have specific guides that will help add energy to the person who's trying to come through, to sort of beef it up, because the person that is sitting in front of me is not really, like, again, a skeptic. So they add the energy, and they can get the messages through them or to them, which is also pretty remarkable to see. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that, when someone's coming in with a high level of energy, the more energy you have, it's better for spirit, because they use that energy. So and I use that energy as a medium. So I think there's definitely a difference.
Yeah, I do too. And things like feeling gratitude and joy and just thinking about the best times, your best vacation, like all of those things can raise that energy level. Stephen, I want to ask you, I know you as a medium, and you've great. Have you had readings where even you're shocked with some of the things that come out of your mouth as far as the level of evidence?
Every day, Sandra. Every single day. Unfortunate or fortunately for me, I'm theatrical anyway. And when I'm sitting there reading or standing, there's times that, like, I can't even tell you how many times I'm in my office and I'm doing a reading, whether it's for 1 or 3 or 5, and my chair just swings back with, I'm so shocked and so surprised that what spirit just gave, or how they gave it, and how the person connected for the evidence, to let the people know that their loved ones are here. I think it's daily. I haven't been doing this since I was a kid, but since I have been doing it daily, I get surprises. I learn from spirit, and I got to say, Sandra, at least weekly, I'll say to Elix or to say to someone, spirit is amazing. I don't know how they do it, and I still feel that way. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's good, really good. And I think, just from what I've learned, taking a couple of mediumship courses, you are just like the telephone. You are bringing through what they tell you or make you feel. And it's not your job to figure it out, but it's your job to convey what they're trying to get through to you. Correct?
Exactly. Absolutely. And one of the things, as a medium, you have to learn is just these particular feelings and symbols and signs. And one of the things I've learned is that they really use, like, when I started reading, they just move all my personal thoughts out of my head. I'm not really sure how they do it, but they do. And then they start replacing them with what they want me to see. But it's really based on my experiences here in the physical world. And they use that to have me get to the messages that they want to give. It's just, and sometimes there's consistent, when I see a bouquet of flowers, right away I know that I have to ask birthday, anniversary, very close, usually 2 weeks back, 2 weeks forward. It's something that spirit uses all the time. And when I first started doing this, I have like a diary book, and I would say, like, a bouquet of flowers equals anniversary, birthday, and then horses equals gambling. I don't know how they do it, but they kind of assign certain things. But there are times on my radio show yesterday, I was reading somebody and kept seeing this lazy Susan, and I asked about it, and it's the first time I've seen it, so I have to also, it's like a learning experience. I have to figure it out, And ultimately what Spirit was giving me was somebody either moving in or moving houses, because it was the Lazy Susan was moving furniture. And that's what they do. And sure enough, the woman I was reading, her boyfriend just moved in with her. So it's really, I keep saying, I'm running out of words, Sandra. Amazing, crazy,
I know.
incredible. It is the way they give me these particular, signs and feelings, and it changes every day. Sometimes I'll feel things without seeing things. Sometimes I see things without feeling things. It's constantly shifting and changing.
Well, if I was the spirit world working through Stephen the Medium, and I'm picking up that, oh, every time I show him flowers, he knows this is going to be a birthday or anniversary. It's shorthand. And if it is all energy and they've got a heavier message to bring through, yeah, if they can use what's in your mind for a little shorthand to get right away, like that would make sense. That's just logical to me.
Yeah. It took me a little bit, Sandra, to understand that, and that was all through my studying. That was one of the things that Carol Nicholson, when I was doing her trainings, said to the class that she was teaching, is that you got to write down, because the Spirit will just. You said it perfectly, Sandra. Others coming through in Spirit will say, "Oh, Stephen knows this equals this, so I'm going to use this again." But there are spirits, though, that are a little crazy, and they want to show off, and they'll show me something that is not the usual sign, and I'll ultimately get there. But I always think, you really had to do that? I already have a sign for that. But they do
funny.
it anyway. Yeah, they do it anyway, and I think it's all in jest. The whole purpose of what I do is that our loved ones want to let everyone know they're still here, but they want us to laugh and to smile, and they want the people I'm reading, that when the hour's over or the 2 hours are over, whatever I'm doing, to walk out with less burden, less guilt, getting them through the grieving process a little bit better. And even if that door opens just a little bit and brings them in a better place, then I feel I've done my job, and Spirit has done their job. So that's what it's really all about.
It is.
It's all about love.
It's about love.
In my radio show, I picked A Lot of Love as it's the only song I use as the opening, as the ending,
I've
when
heard
I'm going
it.
into commercials. And because I've number one, I love the song. I love Nicolette Larson, but number two, I just thought this is perfect. A Lot of Love. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, let's talk about your radio show, my friend, because kudos to you for doing it. And you're doing on live radio, and it's also broadcast across the world on WARAradio.com. How did you get into it? Why did you get into it? And what are you enjoying about doing it?
Well, I'll tell you, Sandra, I know you're going to hear a lot of similarities to what you're doing right now, because as we mentioned, I don't know if on the show or prior to the show, about how Spirit leads us, and we have to follow it, and they're going to make sure we get there.
Yes.
So maybe 3 years ago, I think it was, Dave Kane, who is a comedian, a radio host, he's been in the business forever and a great guy. He reached out. He called me one day. I was leaving court and said, who he is. And he has a radio show on WARA Saturdays called Kane and Company. And I just found out or heard that you're a new medium, and would you be interested in coming on the show? And I'm like, absolutely. And how it happened, a woman who came to me for a reading, she was in a presentation that he was doing. He lost his very sad, he lost his son in the station fire in Rhode Island in the early 2000s. His son was the youngest person who crossed in that fire, fire in this club, and I think he was 18. And so Dave Kane does presentations about the afterlife. And this woman came up and said, I just had a reading with Stephen. Do you know him? And he didn't. So that's how I came onto the show. And Dave would, periodically, every several months, ask me to come on. And ultimately, after a couple of years of doing it, and the phones were ringing off the wall, calling in, and people wanted to get readings, I had a conversation with Jim Jones, the station manager, who was, they're all amazing there, the guys that work there, about having my own show. And ultimately, that's the conversations kept, moving forward. And July 25th of this year was the initial show. And, I actually even did a contest to name the show through the static. And I had over 200 people give me names, and I narrowed it down to 5 and ultimately picked through the static. And I'm very happy I did. And it's another chapter in this whole spirit world, Sandra, that it's a venue, it's a voice that hopefully I'm doing spirit proud. But what I love is that people call in, and on the spot, I do readings. I do live readings, and people love it. Elix, also my husband, is really my co-host. It wasn't set up that way. It wasn't, if I do this radio show, Elix, will you come on? It really wasn't like that. It just kind of fell. I don't know.
Right.
The concept fell that way. Exactly. In the first episode, and Elix used to actually come on with me when I was on Dave Kane. And I don't know what happened. He came on, and from what people say, that the dialogue back and forth with us is people like. It's great. And, being with Elix for going on 26 years, I love him being there. And so the show Sandra, even 2 years ago, if you said to me, do you think you could have your own radio show? I would look at you and say, absolutely not. I've never done a radio show. I wouldn't even know how to do a radio show. And now I'm doing it. And the people that call up, and I've had people call from Scotland, from Australia, from South America. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's rare, I think, that there's a show like yours. I think it is unique and one of a kind. And I listened to a couple episodes actually this morning while I was getting ready. And it just makes me really happy that you're doing it. And because you never know, even when you're listening to a replay, this is for the listener who's listening now, whether it's a replay of my show, Stephen's show, something empowering like this, you just never know what you hear when you need to hear it. And I think the spirit world, our spirit guides, our loved ones have a really wonderful knack of getting us to listen to things. And then, there's some days that I'm pretty down because I'm human as well. But then, I hit something, I listen to something like that and it just strikes a nerve, and it's like, puts life into perspective. Because if you don't mind just sharing, a couple of things. When we go into the spirit world, do we retain our own personalities? Are we still us? And then also, do you think there's a bigger picture about why we're here living on Earth? I know it's a pretty deep question, but it might help some going on holiday time right now, just deal with some of our own fears and down days and missing our loved ones and things like that. Is there a purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, our personalities stay the same when we come into spirit. I always tell people what does change are like sort of the earthly things that we have here, like the jealousy or the egos or the anger or holding on to
Hallelujah.
things. Yes, absolutely, Sandra. That's all. It's all left here. It's all let go. And one of the examples I always get is that I'll be reading someone and say, your dad's talking about the cross, the tattoo cross. This just happened a couple of weeks ago, and the girl looked at me like shocked and said, it's on her back, which of course I couldn't see it. And she said, I can't believe that my father would bring that up because he would hate it. And, and I always have to say that, he loves it. He loves that, what it gives you, how it makes you feel. And that kind of earthly stuff is gone. So, which is a great thing. But for the most part, yes, we keep our personalities. And yes, I mean, I completely think that this is just a small snippet of the bigger picture. And when we're here, I really believe from what Spirit tells me that we come in clusters. We come with certain people that we're supposed to be here with. And, if we're lucky enough, we find our purpose. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that just don't. And everyone learns. We all learn when we're here. But some of us grab the reins of our purpose and we just take it. And, we learn 100% of what we're supposed to. And some maybe learn 50%, which is fine because we're all different. We're all different. Spirit here in the physical world that are on our own journey, and we have to take that journey the way we need to take it. So everybody, no judgment. Everybody has to do what they need to do and learn how they need to learn. But that is a deep question that I think it's a huge picture. And I think that you can tie in the coming back in different lives. And I think it's pretty incredible how this whole thing is set up. I do think, though, people have asked me many times, I do think personally, and I know others may disagree with me, but when we cross and we leave, that say Sandra, let me use my dad. Say my dad's in spirit, he's crossed, and it's almost like what spirit tells me, it's like a tree, and that the base of the tree is my dad, and then there's all these other branches that my dad eventually, if he does get reincarnated and comes back into this earth in a different, as a different person, a different an animal, a different sex, whatever it is, the base of that tree is always there. So in my experience, when I'm reading somebody, that the loved one you remember is always there. And I just, I know that people say, well, if the person's reincarnated, does that mean that I can't get in touch with them anymore? And in my experience, absolutely not. They're always there. The base is there, and the other branches can be other different lives, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me. There's been mediums that have done experiments that, like, a person, a loved one, showed up at the exact same time at two different readings across the world with two sisters. I think one was in Australia, one was in the United States. The mother came through the exact same time. I think that our current brains cannot handle or figure out, like, the law of the cosmos. I mean, we're in a universe of many, many, many universes, and we couldn't possibly, with the minds we have, figure it all out. So I think the afterlife is the same thing. We don't know how it works, but I do believe in my heart that our loved ones can be at two different places at the exact same time. And so if that means, the jury is still out with me on the whole reincarnation thing. It makes sense to me, but until I cross over, I won't know for sure. However, I know that people have come through readings that have been dead 300 years. Now, reincarnation would say that they're back on the planet somewhere. So I do think there is a part of us, yes, that is always us, always accessible. And who really knows where it goes beyond that? But it really doesn't matter. If it's empowering us for our life now, we can rest assured that our loved ones are available, if that makes sense.
Right. No, it makes perfect sense. And I bring that up because a couple of years ago, I had an experience with, my best friend in Helix. We went to see somebody who was doing past life readings. And when we were all there, and they're all separate, we all had our separate time. And when we went to dinner and we were talking about things, my best friend asked this particular person, because the person said, "Do you have any questions?" And my best friend asked about his mom. Is my mom here? And the person's response was, she's no longer available because she's reincarnated. And I just thought, my God, I mean, if as a medium, if I wasn't with him and he walked out of there, that would be, I can't imagine if it was me walking out of there thinking, oh my God, my dad is not here anymore.
Right.
Like, Sandra, I thought I went through a lot of emotions when he told me that. I was mad. I wanted to explain and said, and his mom comes through all the time. She's constantly coming through. And I just thought that, I would never, ever want someone to leave there thinking that, their mom, grandmother, dad, whomever is no longer here because they're reincarnated, because of course they are. They're watching, they're guiding. They want us to live our best lives. They live their lives through our eyes. So it was just something that really hit me hard. And I just thought, oh my God, I would never want anyone to leave a reading that way.
No, my mom's got a really good saying. She's like, what do you call the person who graduated at the bottom of their class from medical school? And the answer is doctor, right? So
right.
I love that, because in any profession, people can hang the shingle saying anything. And so I recommend people that are interested in seeing a medium, just because they say psychic medium, doesn't mean they're great. Just like going to a restaurant. you go to a restaurant for the first time, yeah, you may like it, you may not. But if you have 20 friends telling you, oh my God, you're going to love the pasta primavera at such and such a place, it's like you tend to go, well, maybe I'll try that. So
Absolutely.
whoever that woman was, and I also know of mediums and psychics that give like bad information, negative things are going to happen. And I think there's a code of ethics. And I also think no one really can guarantee the future. And it's like,
Right.
when you get somebody like that, it's can do so much more harm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I only brought that up, Sandra, because it was something that just a couple of weeks ago was brought up on my radio show. And for your listeners, I just want to make sure everyone that listens, that they just know that our loved ones are always with us.
Oh, and do we need to go to a medium to talk to our loved ones?
Yes, only me, Stephen the medium. That's all you need to say. So.
You're very funny.
Not at Sandra, not at all. When back before I was a medium, and I used to hear mediums saying how everyone is intuitive. I always wanted to grasp onto that, but then also thought, because I'm human too, and thought, but are they saying that because they just want us to come to their classes?
Yeah.
But now that I'm a medium and seeing this, and I know 100% that every one of us are connected, and every one of us receive many, many signs every day. It's what you said earlier, Sandra. It's just, you've got to get out of the technology we have. You've got to be present, and you will see the signs. It's just switching your mind a little bit. But boy, when you switch it, it's like, it's like Dorothy opening the door in black and white into color. You all of a sudden see all these signs. And that's why when you look at someone and say, how come my best friend gets all these signs and I receive nothing?
Right.
It's not about you not receiving it. It's that you just have to switch your mind a little bit and be open to it, observe it, and you'll get your signs.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Yeah. It's like act as if, you put a smile on your face. If you're in a miserable mood, you start feeling happy. Act as if you can see signs. Pay attention. Well, what signs can I see? Talk to your loved one and just be open for what comes through. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
I love talking to you. So it's holiday time. We are recording this just a couple of weeks away from Christmas. Any advice or thoughts for those who have a loved one no longer with them in the physical, but how they can go forward in this holiday season? Just a little bit of comfort or advice?
Yeah, Sandra. I mean, I know it's difficult no matter when you lose somebody, but the holidays beef up that emotion, that sadness, that grieving, because it's when families get together. So, I tell people, even from now, in the Christmas season, the holiday season, to people, first of all, number one, what I mentioned before is that you have to hold on to the notion that your loved ones who have crossed are still here. I know it's a biggie that they're not here physically, but the analogy I always use is just like a caterpillar who changes into a butterfly. The caterpillar is a one physical way and changes into the butterfly, which is completely physically completely different, but the essence, the soul of that caterpillar and the butterfly are the same thing. We lose the physical piece, but energy wise, spirit wise, we're still here. And what you said is perfect, Sandra, is that I tell people, make sure you talk to your loved ones and ask them to show you signs. But when you ask them, then surrender it and say, listen, Ma, Dad, give me a sign. I really need to know you're here, but I'm going to surrender it. I know you're going to help me to be able to see it, and I know you're going to give it to me. And it's not like if you ask for a penny, it's going to fall from the ceiling onto the floor. But I guarantee you, within very short period of time, you're going to open the door to the supermarket and see the penny and pick it up and look at the year and say, oh my God, that was the year I was born. Ma, Dad. And that's how it works. And I think that really is a way to hold on to when you get that sign, wrap yourself around it and just remember it, write it down, date it, and say, and so when you're feeling bad some subsequent time, you look at it and say, Dad, I know you did this. Ma, I know you did this, and I know you're here. That's I think the best advice. Just telling people your loved ones are still here. They're standing right next to you. They're in front of you. They're behind you 24/7. they're with you. They know what everything's going on and how much all they want to do is just give love.
They do. And one of my guests back sometime last year just had a great practice that I thought was so unique is have a cup of coffee or whatever and put an empty cup across the table from you. Start carrying on a regular conversation with your loved one. Close your eyes, give them the opportunity to draw close and see how that feels. Just maybe even set a date with them for when you're going to do this. And like I said, I don't believe we get all the wisdom of the universe when we cross over, but give them time to practice getting in touch with you and using some of their energy to create this signs. Even you could even set a place at the Christmas or Hanukkah table for your loved one and include them. And I tell you that those kind of steps really do help, especially if you are experiencing grief, because even though you can't see it, you can believe it. I mean, I always say you can't see the wireless signal that connects us right now or the GPS signals or television rays, but they're very, very real. And so your loved
absolutely.
one.
I love Sandra. I love that. What you just said, and I'm going to do it this year, and I'm going to have to go out today and buy a much bigger dining room table because there's going to be a lot of settings on that table. But I love it. That is so genius. It's wonderful to do that. Anything that helps you is good with me.
Yeah, it's great. And then also, I was at a funeral and I heard the priest talk about grief and having the loved one physically die. But he said, imagine that they get on a cruise ship and they're carrying on all you can eat buffets and the dancing and the beautiful locations. And then, they end up on this tropical island and everything's just beautiful. And they're great. They're doing great. And they can always be in contact with the phone. You can't see them, but it was just a really neat way to say, they're great. Yes, we're going to be left grieving and we'll miss them, but having that certainty that we're going to go meet them. Like I heard a great quote that our lifetime here is but a thread in the fabric of our soul. There is so much a bigger picture to who we are. And although it's tough, I know firsthand how painful it is to have a loved one not here physically. But man, I want, and Stephen does too, give you the hope and the confidence to know that we don't die. They're still around. You can be in touch with them, still talk to them, and their love certainly doesn't die.
I was going to say, Sandra, one of the best expressions I've ever heard, which I think there's a reason for it, is that grieving and gratitude can show up at the same table. And I love that because that's what you need. When you're grieving, you have to grieve the way you grieve, but it's okay to then bring in gratitude as you're grieving. That's going to help you connect with spirit.
Absolutely, it is. And I'm getting a picture in my mind of this little sprout coming through the ground with the leaves growing and all that. I believe it from my experience that grief can be the thing for new growth. It can set some of us on our spiritual journeys or our search for the meaning of life. And if you were to tell me that the death of my father would be the worst and the best thing that ever happened to me, I wouldn't believe it. I mean, at the time, it was the most painful thing. But where I am now, it's actually 8 years later, is incredible.
Same here. And I think the same thing for my dad. Same exact thing. And back then, I would never have agreed with you. But now, absolutely, Sandra. It makes sense. And I think it's all timing that when we learn things and realize things when we're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. And we all have our individual journeys. There's not a cookie cutter medium. There's not a cookie cutter human being. We're all special. We all have our own gifts and our own paths.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think that's the key is that even people that have spoken to me and said that they've taken classes and whether it's Reiki or whatever it is, and I always tell people the one thing you have to learn is patience, and also know whether it's spirit or anything else that no comparison. Don't compare yourself to anybody. This is your own path. It's really your own goal. It's your you're separate from everybody else, and it's very special and specific for you. So you've just got to let your flower bloom when it's supposed to bloom.
That's beautiful. Can't force a rosebud to open, can you? Or any flower. Nope.
No, and again, I don't know if this happened in the first show, but my grandma Rose is always with me, and she always makes a little appearance. And with you saying the rosebud, Grandma Rose is here.
You bet.
I love it, Sandra. I love it. You're the medium. You just brought it through. So
we are all souls having a human experience. Yesterday, Stephen, I interviewed a lady named Nicola Farmer, and this is mind-blowing. She teaches young kids how to read with blindfolds on. So literally, they are blindfolded, and she tells them that they can do this. So, of course, at a young age, they're open to believing it. And then they will open a book, and they're pointing to the words and they're reading it, or they can tell colors, or they can do arts and crafts. They're even playing catch with a ball, all completely blindfolded. And that to me is an instance that we are souls having a human experience. As we grow up, we forget, but we all have our own gifts, and whichever it is that you're passionate about or you want to pursue, go for it. But we are special.
That's incredible. That really is incredible.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was episode 281, and we are on 282. So before we close the episode, I just want to talk a little bit, because you have said yes to my invitation to do a demonstration at our live event, which is going to be called We Don't Die Boston, February 22nd to 24th, 2019. Thank you.
Are you kidding? I almost jumped out the window when you asked me. I was so excited about this, Sandra.
Oh, it's great. It'll be my guests that have been on the show before, people like Sonia Rinaldi and Scott Milligan, myself, a few new people that you'll meet. Just what I think is going to be the best education, information, inspiration, that life after death is real, comfort through grief, and even do a couple exercises to let us all know that we are more than just our skin and bones. We really are souls having a human experience. But I invite our listener to come to that if you can. February 22nd through 24th, WeDon'tDieBoston.com is the website. Stephen, any closing words or something you're inspired to share before we end the episode?
And well, there's a lot. This goes just so quickly, but I will just, in closing, say that tomorrow morning, and I'm not sure if this will air afterwards or not, which is fine because it will be on Facebook, but I will be on WJAR Channel 10 Rhode Island on what's called Coffee Break with Frank Coletta. This is an anchor person who's been with the same station for 40 years, and I am going on to just talk about my life as a medium, and also hopefully to do a reading.
Oh, congratulations.
It's fed through Facebook Live. So if you go on, you have to be on Facebook, but it's on the Facebook WJAR Channel 10 Facebook, and it's going to, every day they do the, it's called Coffee Break, and they do this daily, and I'm really excited about doing it.
Yes, I'm excited about you doing it also. And what I will do, because most likely most of the listeners will hear this after the fact, but I will attach the link to that video just below this episode on YouTube so you can watch it. And
Sandra, thank you.
Kudos to you also for being having that in a beautiful article in the Boston Globe newspaper.
The Boston Globe, thank you for bringing that up. And
that's a big deal.
I was the first attorney / medium to be profiled in Mass Lawyers Weekly, which is a conservative newspaper, but I was also in that too. So I was really excited about that.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I'm so proud of you.
No, Sandra, as I am of you.
Oh, thanks. We got a good friendship. And then Elix has been interviewed on this show before, Elix Cintron, and also he is my coach, business and life, and all these great things that I'm up to. He's usually my man behind the scenes, encouraging me that I can take risks and I can go for it and I can make a difference, and I'm the one. And so every time I step out of my comfort zone, it's usually because there's a little nudge from him. I hear your puppies in the background. You can go to Stephen's website at stephenthemedium.com. And I also encourage anyone to listen to past episodes of Through the Static with Stephen, or listen to a live show and possibly call in and get a reading. And you can find out more at wararadio.com and just go to the hosts and you can see Through the Static with Stephen the Medium. Stephen, thank you for being our guest today.
You kidding? Thank you for having me for a second time. I'm very privileged that I've been able to do this twice. So, and I'm gonna look down, and if there's anybody that has a record more than me, then I'm gonna be back on because I want to be first.
Okay. Well, I do love how this all works because when I hired Elix as my coach, and he says, "Did you know my husband is a medium?" I'm like, "No," and it's like, because I think the spirit world has a really good sense of humor, putting the people together where they need to be. And anyways, for our listener, thank you for taking the time to listen. Our home base for this show is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. And now you can find 282 episodes. Wow. And also a very healing audio called How to Survive Grief, because I do know the pain of grief. And if you're somebody who's experiencing the physical death of a loved one right now, with all my heart, I am sorry what you're going through. Unfortunately, I feel the only way to the other side of grief is to go right through it. But I will give you everything I've got through these episodes, and even a free copy of my book to help you. So there's a healing audio called How to Survive Grief at WeDon'tDieRadio.com. Also a link. It says just read a few chapters of my book. It's really the whole book. And chapter 10 is just about grief. So another invitation, come to WeDon'tDieBoston.com. It will be a lot of fun. You'll meet friends you will have for the rest of your life and be in the hands of those who love you, both in this world and your loved ones from the other side. And we will prove it to you. So in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain. Always delighted to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. I do believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here on earth is important. Go check out stephenthemedium.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.